Okay, so this is my own story, and it went in a direction I never anticipated. Let's get right to it. My parents told me, "We're finished raising your mistake. Leave and don't ever return." And with that, they threw my 5-year-old and me out into a blizzard. 3 hours later, a knock came at their door. They answered, and then they screamed. If you're wondering how we got from orange juice to homelessness, so am I. It was 11:15 at night, that deep quiet when the whole house is asleep, and the snow outside was whipping sideways with a real attitude. My daughter Zoe was wide awake. Not in a cute, sleepy toddler way. She was 5 now. She had strong opinions and endless questions. She had the dramatic flair of a tiny executive discovering a corporate takeover. "I don't like the wind," she murmured, her eyes glinting in the dark. "It's only the weather," I whispered back. As if that explanation would help, like a storm cares about logic. I gathered her up and crept down the hall, because waking my parents was like prodding a bear and being shocked when it attacked. Even in the silence, the house was full of tension. It wasn't a restful quiet. It felt like everyone was holding their breath, just waiting for me to slip up. I tried to be cautious, to be perfect, to be unseen. When we reached the kitchen, I switched on the dimmest light, just enough to see, moving like an intruder in my own home. I poured Zoe a little orange juice, the one thing that reliably calmed her down. It seemed like such a small, harmless thing to do. Then, a light switched on, followed by footsteps on the stairs. An upstairs door creaked, then a sigh filled with so much disgust you'd think my breathing was a crime. Mom stood at the landing, her tone sharp and weary in that way that was never about the present moment. It was about my existence. "What is going on?" Zoe was awake. I explained softly. "I was just getting her." My sister Savannah appeared, looking disheveled and instantly annoyed, like a royal woken by servants. At 17, she was old enough to be considerate, but young enough to feel entitled to perfect silence. She glared at Zoe like she was a stain on the carpet. "Are you serious right now?" Savannah hissed. "I have classes. Some of us have lives." I apologized on instinct. It was our family's default setting. "Apologize. Don't explain." "I'm so sorry," I said. "We'll just be a second." Savannah came into the kitchen, arms crossed, speaking with a practiced, icy calm. "Can you try to be quiet? It's really late." Zoe's little hands were shaky and clumsy. As she reached for the juice, her fingers fumbled. The cup went over. Orange juice soaked into the rug. There was one heavy beat of silence. My brain went into damage control. Towels, napkins, anything. It was just juice. Not poison, not blood. Not the end of the world. Dad's heavy tread on the stairs made them groan. Mom gasped as if the house itself had been attacked. Savannah's face was a mask of cold fury. "You cannot be serious." I dropped to my knees, grabbing towels. "It's fine, it's okay, I'll clean it," I said. My voice fast and low, as if making myself smaller could make the situation less painful. Zoe's lower lip quivered. "I'm sorry." "It's okay, baby," I whispered. "It's not your fault." Dad moved with a purpose, as if he'd been waiting for a trigger, and the spilled juice was it. "I'm done," he announced. "I am done with this." Mom was right behind him. "This is not a daycare. We are tired of this mess." "I'll clean it up," I insisted. "It was an accident. She's only 5. As always, Savannah stoked the fire. She can't even manage her own child. Dad's eyes fell on Zoe for a moment, not as a little girl, but as evidence in a trial. Then he said it, the words polished from years of waiting on his tongue. "We are done raising your mistake. Get out of our house and don't come back." For a moment, my mind went blank. How are you supposed to respond to that? What do you say when someone calls your child a mistake? Like it's a simple fact, a permanent flaw. I just stared up at them, towels in my hands, as the orange juice stains spread across the carpet. "Dad," my voice sounded distant. "It's a blizzard out there. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem," he said. Mom stared at the carpet, as if it were the real victim here. I kept telling myself, They don't mean this. They'll calm down. Any second, someone will put a stop to this. Mom will give in. Dad will come to his senses. No one stopped it. Dad packed our things with a disturbing efficiency, like he was finally executing a long-held plan. Mom ripped Zoe's coat from a hook and thrust it at me. While pushing a bag into my hands, Dad twisted the house key off my ring. He closed his fist around it. These are not yours any longer. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Just for tonight, I begged. I can sleep in the car. You will not, Savannah said, her voice rigid. You aren't staying here. My mother just looked away. Savannah watched us, looking eerily satisfied. Dad pulled the door open, and the cold air rushed in like a punch. Snow swirled into the hall. Zoe whimpered, hiding behind me. They forced us out like trash for pickup. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. It wasn't the shouting that shattered me, it was that quiet final sound. Zoe immediately burst into tears, her small body shaking with sobs. She saw the orange splash on her coat sleeve and whispered, I'm sorry, it was my fault. I knelt down, wiping her tears, trying desperately not to break down on the front porch. No, I told her firmly. This is never your fault. Do you understand me? Never. Inside, panic was screaming. I had no money, nowhere to go, and a child to protect. The porch light felt like a spotlight on our despair. I dragged our bags to my clunker of a car, my one piece of freedom, and buckled Zoe in. My hands were trembling so much I struggled with the clasp. My phone was nearly dead, my bank account a joke. The amount of money that evaporates the moment you need it. I tried to think of who to call, but it was late, during a storm. All my friends had warm houses I didn't want to disrupt. So I drove, because staying still felt like defeat. I headed for any place with lights and heat, a motel, a diner, somewhere that wouldn't ask too many questions or reject us for being broken. The road was a sheet of ice. The snow was relentless. The wipers were useless. In the back, Zoe sniffled. Where are we going, Mommy? I answered with a false brightness. Because that's what mothers do to keep the world from ending. We're on an adventure, I said. Zoe was silent. I was so focused on the road, I didn't notice the headlights until it was too late. An intersection. A patch of ice. A blur of motion. Another car sliding. The impact slammed into us, stealing my breath. Zoe let out one terrified shriek. The shriek turned into heavy sobbing. My entire world shrank to her. I twisted around, hands shaking, checking her face, her limbs. Talk to me, honey, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Look at me. Are you hurt anywhere? She shook her head fiercely, still crying. I'm scared. I checked her again anyway, looking for any sign of injury. There was nothing, just raw, overwhelming fear. Through the driving snow, a woman approached, her movements calm and controlled. She peered into my car, saw Zoe's tear-stained face, the luggage, and immediately grasped the situation. She wasn't angry. She didn't blame me or raise her voice. She simply asked, Why on earth are you out in this storm with a 5-year-old? I was about to lie, but the truth just came out. We were just thrown out. Tonight. Her expression changed, as if the words had struck her. What is your name? She asked. Clara, I answered. Her eyes darted to my face, like she was confirming a memory she hoped was wrong. Then she murmured, almost to herself, Clara Walker. I froze solid. I haven't seen you since you were in my... She trailed off, stopping herself. Where did you end up? How did she know my last name? I'd learned growing up that my place in the family wasn't as a daughter, but as a shock absorber. When Savannah threw fits, my parents coddled her, and I just had to succeed quietly. My parents simply accepted it and moved on. If Savannah was emotional, it was a crisis. If I was, it was an inconvenience. I was always told to grow up. I learned to make myself small, since being noticed always came at a price. I never understood why they needed a family scapegoat until I became pregnant. Before then, my future felt certain. During my sophomore year, I was accepted into a competitive university research program designed for exceptional high schoolers. This wasn't a passive lecture series, it was genuine, hands-on work. Our small team gathered on campus every Saturday to advance our project. We managed data, created presentations, and wrote reports a true glimpse into a professional future. And the core of the program made me feel like I actually had one. Each week, I had a one-on-one meeting with a mentor. Those 15 minutes were my lifeline. I finally had someone asking about my ambitions, not my errors. I saved only one thing from that time. I didn't realize it would resurface after my world collapsed. It was my future scholar's ID on a blue lanyard. I never put it on again, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it out. Back then, my life felt like it was just beginning. Then Brendan entered the picture. He was charming when things were simple and remote, when they became complicated. He made me feel wanted, a stark contrast to being merely tolerated at home. So, I fell for him completely. A classic tale of a girl starved for kindness who mistook attention for affection. When I learnt I was pregnant, I wasn't scared. My instant reaction was, I can manage this. I can stay in school, complete the program, and not lose who I am. I was only 15. He was 17. He pledged to support me and then vanished. I later heard he'd gone to college overseas in Europe. We've had almost no contact since. I thought breaking the news to my parents would be the ultimate challenge. I was mistaken. I told them in the kitchen, my hands trembling so hard the words barely came out. A brief silence followed, letting a sliver of hope appear. Then I saw my mother's expression change not to anger, but to revulsion. My father's first concern wasn't for me, but for who knew. They offered no help, only questions about appearances. What will people say? You've humiliated us. You've destroyed your future. Savannah watched the scene unfold like it was a movie, confirming her own beliefs about me. I braced for punishment. I never anticipated being erased. They initially pulled me from school for a while. This shifted to homeschooling, which then became, you're not returning at all. They claimed it was to quash any potential gossip. It was about protecting the family's image, hiding my disgrace as if my pregnancy was a public scandal. They insisted I quit the mentorship program right away. No more weekends, no more guidance, no more prospects. I tried to resist. I attempted to negotiate. Just let me finish this term, I pleaded. My father's reply cut deep. If you weren't clever enough to prevent this, you're not clever enough for university, and that settled it. The program continued without me. I just disappeared, not attending or taking calls. The worst part was leaving without any goodbyes. When Zoe was born, my love for her was so fierce it was overwhelming. But love was not a shield in that house. It was just another vulnerability. My parents saw Zoe as a chore and a disruption. Their cruelty was always private, save for when no one else was around. Savannah had a normal adolescence with parties, school, and friends. My life was pure exhaustion and constant reminders of my debt to my parents for their roof. I always told my daughter she was never a burden. 5 years down the line, she spilled her juice. In the car afterwards, a question I couldn't voice was caught in my throat. Zoe's tiny voice piped up from the back seat. Mummy, are we going back home? I gripped the steering wheel, as if it could somehow right the situation. We're going to find somewhere warm, I replied. It's the only thing to say when you're 5 and homeless. The woman outside didn't appear mad. She seemed hyper-aware, already anticipating what else might go wrong. She bent over just so Zoe could see her clearly. Her eyes quickly scanned Zoe the seatbelt, her face, her hands, in a swift, efficient check. She then met my gaze. Is she hurt? No, I answered hastily. I don't think so. Just shaken up. A small, broken sound from Zoe confirmed it. The woman gave a sharp nod. Okay. My heart hammered in my chest. Snow beat against the windshield. I am so sorry, I blurted out. I didn't even see you. I was just... She cut me off, accustomed to panic. It's a bumper, she said. Don't even think about it. I just stared. People usually make a big deal about bumpers. Bitter disputes have started for far less. I hit your car, I insisted, my mind needing the structure of blame to make sense of things. You made a driving error in a storm, she gently corrected. It happens. Then her tone shifted completely. How old is she? 5. Her expression tensed, not because of me or the car, but because of the number. She looked back at Zoe. Hi, sweetie. What's your name? Zoe looked at me, as if for permission to speak. Zoe, I answered for her. Her name is Zoe. The woman acknowledged it. Hi, Zoe. I'm Simona. Then her gaze returned to me. Clara, where were you driving to? A motel, I mumbled, the word tasting of shame. And after that? She inquired. My throat felt tight. I don't know. She passed no judgment. She offered no pity. Just waited patiently, sensing the whole story was about to surface. I swallowed hard. My voice was a whisper when I said, My parents threw us out tonight. Her expression changed. It wasn't shock, but a quiet fury looking for a place to settle. In this kind of weather? She asked softly. I could only nod. Zoe whimpered behind me, understanding enough to feel the fear. Simona breathed out slowly. Then she announced with a calm authority that left no room for debate. Okay, you're done driving for the evening. I have to, I responded by instinct. I don't have. I heard you, she interrupted. You have nowhere to go. That's exactly why you're stopping. She stepped away from my door and gestured to a nearby parking area. Turn on your hazards, she directed. Pull in there slowly. I'm right behind you. My pride wanted to object, but a soft mummy from Zoe silenced it completely. Any defiance I had just vanished. I turned on my flashers and guided the car into the lot with the same care as someone disarming a bomb. Simona parked right behind me. She got out, snapped 2 quick photos of the bumpers and the road, and then put her phone away, effectively tabling the issue for another time. I stepped out as well, and the sharp cold was breathtaking. I am so sorry again, I said, unable to break my cycle of apologies. It's nothing, she replied, her attention already fixed on Zoe in the car. Is her car seat installed correctly? Yes. Good. She turned to me. Do you have your keys? My car key. Yes, I confirmed. Not my house key. He kept it. Her jaw set firmly. Okay. She said nothing else. She went to her car's back door and pulled out a blanket. It was a practical move, not a dramatic one. She was someone prepared for life's emergencies. She draped it over the back seat and then opened the door. Hey, she said gently. Come sit in here and get warm. Zoe looked at her, then glanced at me for approval. I nodded. It's fine, honey. She climbed in, clutching her coat, her rapid breathing finally calming down. I gathered our bags from my car. My clumsy fingers fumbled with a zipper, and I inevitably dropped one. Simona simply picked it up and gave it back to me without a fuss. Lock your car, she instructed. I did. The click of the lock felt tiny compared to the magnitude of our night. I then slipped into the passenger seat of her car, my heart still pounding in my throat. As she drove, my mind scrambled to process everything. I finally recalled what she'd said at the scene of the accident. Calm, precise, Walker. I didn't ask about it. Zoe was listening from the back, and I couldn't risk her carrying that burden. Simona drove quietly for a moment before asking, Are there any friends you could stay with? I just stared at the dashboard. No. I offered no context or defense. Simply, no. She nodded once. Okay, she said again. It wasn't an expression of pity, but an acceptance of fact. We pulled into the driveway of a simple house with welcoming lights on. It wasn't fancy or imposing, just solid. The moment we were inside, a wave of warmth hit us so hard my eyes watered. Zoe immediately went limp under the blanket, as though fear alone had been holding her upright. Simona was gone for 30 seconds, then returned with warm socks and hot chocolate that smelled genuinely homemade. Zoe just stared at her and asked, "Are you a nice person?" with a 5-year-old's typical lack of tact. Simona took a moment, seeming to weigh her response. "I'm trying to be," she said. "Is that all right?" Zoe glanced at me. My throat was tight, but I nodded. "Yeah, honey." Simona then looked at me. "Sit down." I perched on the couch's edge, my coat still on, bracing for a shouting match that never started. The house was peaceful, with soft lighting, books, and a tidy mail stack, a quiet that felt secure, not like a trap. Since my hands were trembling, I dug into my bag to keep them busy, but a blue Future Scholars lanyard popped into view. My cheeks burned with shame. I couldn't believe I still had that mortifying token from a life I never got to have. I stuffed it out of sight, as if hiding the object would erase the fact that I once had a future. Simona's gaze still caught it, though. She said nothing, but froze for a fraction of a second. As she moved into the kitchen light, my brain finally put the pieces together. The way she stood, her tone, how she looked at me like I was someone. My stomach plunged. "No," I breathed. Her face softened with what looked like sadness, or maybe it was relief. "It's me," she said softly. "Dr. Carr." The world seemed to shift. Dr. Simona Carr, who was my mentor 5 years back, the only adult who saw potential in me instead of problems. Zoe let out a yawn and slumped against a cushion, too exhausted to see my world imploding. Dr. Carr spoke quietly. "What happened to you?" I tried to downplay it. "Life got in the way." She waited, giving me space. The truth tumbled out in fragments. Pregnant at 15, leaving school, homeschooling that went nowhere, no diploma, no future, no goodbyes, and then getting locked out tonight. I braced for the judgment, the disappointment, the disgust. None of it appeared. She just gave a slow, single nod. "What do you need from that house right now?" "My wallet," I answered, without thinking. Zoe's school forms. Then my mind caught up. "My EpiPen," I added. "Shellfish allergy." I tried to sound casual, as if I wasn't constantly one bad meal away from disaster. Dr. Carr saw right through it. "No," she said, her voice soft but firm. "We're not taking chances with that." "I'm not going in there." "Of course not," she agreed. "We will get your things." She pushed a notepad my way. "Just the essentials." My hand started moving. EpiPen, wallet, Zoe's papers. Anything with our legal names. Dr. Carr made a non-emergency call. I heard snippets. Lockout. Young child present. Crucial medication. Requesting a civil standby. Need to de-escalate. Just then my phone screen lit up. Dad. Then Mom. I stared at it for a beat too long. Dr. Carr stood near me, quietly. I finally picked up. "Hello?" My father started yelling instantly. "What have you done? The police showed up at our house." My mom jumped in, her voice filled with rage. "How could you call the cops on us? Do you have any idea how bad this makes us look?" My throat closed up as the old instinct to shrink and apologize surged. I looked over at Zoe, who was finally asleep on the couch. "I called because I need my EpiPen," I stated. "That's all," my dad scoffed. "Always some drama." "I'm ending this call now," I said. Their voices got louder, nastier, talking over each other. I hung up. An officer later dropped off my things and took a short statement from me. What was the situation? Were we in danger? Was my daughter okay? Once the door was shut again, the silence felt entirely new. It wasn't the quiet that comes before a punishment, but the calm that follows survival. Dr. Carr didn't offer praise or a lecture. She simply asked, "Are you hungry?" The normality of it nearly shattered me. Later, with Zoe asleep under a fresh blanket and my EpiPen within easy reach, I managed to say, "Thank you, we'll be out of your hair tomorrow." Dr. Carr's eyes went from Zoe back to me. You can stay, she said, not as an offer, but as a statement of fact. Just for tonight, I whispered. She shook her head. Until you are on your feet. Until you're secure. Can we really stay? I asked quietly. The most terrifying thing was that I had no clue why she was helping us, why she was being so kind. All I knew was the feeling of imagining a morning that didn't start with fear. The next day, the house was quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It was more like the aftermath of a blaze. The air still held the faint smell of smoke, long after the fire was out. Zoe slept on the couch, as if she deserved the rest. I didn't. I sat bolt upright, still dressed, watching my phone like it was a snake. No missed calls, no angry texts. The lack of chaos was unsettling. Dr. Carr placed a coffee mug before me, a gesture that felt more functional than comforting. She sat down opposite me. Where are you employed? A supermarket, I told her. Morning stock crew. And you had a shift today. I missed it. She didn't react. We can call. We. The word felt like a key turning in a lock. She used the speakerphone, forcing me to confront it. I explained the situation, weather, car trouble, a family emergency. I can be there tomorrow. My boss grumbled, but he kept me on the schedule. After the call, I felt my shoulders relax slightly. Zoe wandered into the room, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She scanned her surroundings, as if expecting it all to be gone. Are we still here? She asked. Yes, sweetie. I kissed her forehead. We're still here. Zoe accepted this, then asked, Are they still angry? I resisted, saying that my parents didn't do angry. They operated on a setting of perpetual disappointment. I just told her, We are safe. Zoe took this at face value, the way children do, as if safety were a tangible thing. When I returned from dropping Zoe at school, I stood in Dr. Carr's kitchen like someone awaiting a scolding. She glanced over. You don't have to make that face in here. What face? The one that's braced for impact. I let out a short, harsh laugh. It's an old habit. She nodded, as if she knew all about those. Then she stated, You never finished your schooling. A knot formed in my stomach. No. Did you get your GED? She asked. No. She didn't press for a reason or give me a lecture. She just looked straight at me. Do you want to? The question was like a physical blow, because for years I told myself I wasn't allowed to want things. I have to work, I said reflexively. Zoe is in school, Dr. Carr replied. And you're a smart woman. That was 5 years ago, I started to say. She cut me off. Not 50. I despised that she was right. She pushed a notepad my way. It wasn't a platitude. It was a schedule. 2 hours a night, she said. 4 times a week. We'll start there. And we won't let shame derail us. I stared at the paper as if it were a bomb. And what if I fail? I asked. Then you do it over? She said, as if it were that simple. That's when her help stopped feeling like a rescue and started to feel like a quiet rebellion. It was the kind you see when a grown woman opens a textbook and chooses to ignore the voice insisting it's too late. My life became intentionally overloaded. I worked early shifts, handled school drop-off, then studied at her table while Zoe drew next to me. We'd do dinner, bath, and bedtime, and then I'd face another hour with books I was told I'd forfeited. There were nights I almost gave up, not from exhaustion, but from rage. Rage at my parents for taking my future and calling it a lesson. Rage that I was rebuilding what should have been given to me. The first time a practice GED test came back with a passing score, Zoe cheered as if I'd just won the World Series. My mom is smart, she declared. I just snorted. Mom is stubborn. After I passed the official exam, I sat in my car in the testing center's lot and cried like a person who had it all together. Zoe asked why I was crying, and I said, because I'm happy. She just said, oh, as if happy tears were normal. Next came community college, because tuition bills don't care about your backstory. I stayed at my job. I squeezed in classes whenever possible. I learned to exist in that gap between having no time and finding a way. Dr. Carr's support was never about pep talks. It was purely practical. A ride when my car broke down. Watching Zoe during an exam when she was sick. A calm, direct email to a professor who treated accommodations like a character flaw. I never became brave, just more prepared. Returning to State University was like stepping into a parallel life where I hadn't been deleted. One day, I saw the Honours Society building. My stomach plunged, as if the past had reached out and physically grabbed me. Dr. Carr was silent, just keeping pace with me. Being a student parent on campus was unforgiving. Everyone thought time management was the magic solution, as if you could just magically summon childcare. I found other student mothers, all in a quiet state of terror, always one crisis away from quitting. So I built a support network. First a group text, then we shared notes, traded babysitting, and made a late-night emergency call list. Dr. Carr saw it expanding and passed me an envelope one night. She said it was a grant opportunity and to write a proposal. I was floored. I'm not the right person. She raised an eyebrow. You're living the experience. That makes you qualified. So I wrote it, and we got it. Then we secured a second one. When one mom said our group was why she was still enrolled, I cried in a bathroom for exactly 30 seconds before my shift. During that year, Dr. Carr's help felt less like pity, and more like a genuine connection. Zoe's drawings started appearing on her fridge. The pantry was always filled with snacks Zoe loved. A small toothbrush I hadn't seen before showed up in her bathroom. One evening, Zoe dozed off on the sofa. Dr. Carr draped a blanket over her and just watched for a long moment. The question tumbled out before I could stop it. Why are you doing all this? She kept her gaze on Zoe breathing. I thought I had more time, she said softly. I waited. I kept delaying the family part, she explained. After tenure, maybe. Then later never arrived. Her tone was steady, but her hand wasn't. This house has been silent for a very long time, she said. I didn't know how to react to that vulnerability, so I tried to lighten it. So, we're your chaotic little invasion. The corner of her mouth lifted, something to that effect. Then she met my eyes and said the words I'll always remember. I didn't pick you because I needed a project. I picked you because no child should ever think she's a mistake. My throat tightened. I just nodded, still bad at accepting kindness without saying sorry. By graduation day, Zoe was 10, old enough that the hardship was a permanent memory. My sister Savannah was also getting her degree. Same college, same auditorium. My parents were there for her, which was no surprise. I spotted them first and felt that old urge to shrink. It didn't take over. The announcer's voice echoed through the hall. Please welcome our student speaker, the founder of the Student Parent Support Initiative, Clara Walker. I walked into the light. Savannah applauded, but her hands froze. 2 rows back, all color drained from my mother's face. My father leaned in, staring as if he could will time backward. I reached the podium, adjusting the mic. Good evening, I'm Clara Walker. I'm a graduate and a mother. Zoe sat up front with Dr. Carr, her gaze holding me steady. When Zoe was 5, I said, my parents announced they were done raising my mistake. They told me to leave and never return. The entire room fell silent. Heads began to turn, subtly then, more obviously, toward my frozen parents. My mom covered her mouth. My dad's knuckles were white. Savannah stared at her lap as if it could swallow her. They took my key, I continued, my voice even. They shoved some bags at me. They closed the door in the middle of a snowstorm. The bare truth was enough. I was in my car with my child asking to go home, I said, and I had to be the parent, even when I felt like a terrified kid. The atmosphere in the hall shifted. People were no longer just listening politely. They were in it with me. That same night, I was in a small fender bender. I said no one was hurt, but I remember thinking, of course. A few nervous laughs rippled out, the dark humor of terrible timing. The woman from the other car wasn't worried about her bumper, I said. She asked a single question. Where are you going? I paused. I don't know, I answered. The silence was heavy. She took us in, I said. She gave us a place to stay. I looked toward the front. That woman is Dr. Simona Carr. Applause erupted instantly. Dr. Carr just nodded once, her eyes shining. This initiative exists for that reason, I said. Because being brilliant means nothing without childcare. Drive means nothing if a sick day can derail your education. And no one should be forced to choose between feeding their child and finishing their degree. I let the words sink in. If anyone has ever called you a mistake, I concluded, my voice firm, they were wrong. I stepped away. The applause was a roar now, completely genuine. My mother was weeping openly. My father stared ahead as if the ground had given way. Savannah couldn't bring her hands together to clap. For the first time, they had no control over the story. Afterward, they approached me. I knew they would. There were tears, apologies, a sudden need to reframe the past. I didn't raise my voice. I forgive you. I said it to free myself from that poison. But I am not going back. But we're family, they insisted. I looked at Zoe, then at Dr. Carr. No, I replied softly. Family is who is there. And I left. I wasn't angry or triumphant, just done with it. My life was finally my own, not a punishment. People love to say, but they're your parents, until they are the one being abandoned in a storm. I forgave them, but that did not include giving them access to my life again. Reconnect or no contact? What's your choice? Comment below and subscribe if you'd like.